if I can put my finger on the heart of the problem is not the refugees. The heart of the problem is our governments. Not only have they mixed into war situations, and I don't want to go into those politics, and the film isn't about the politics anyway, but they've created a huge problem for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. So there's war, there's violence, there's persecution, and there's people trying to get away and find a life, just as like people were trying to jump out of that burning building in London, that horrifying tragedy. Well, that's what refugees have come from. So yeah. I have to say straight off, the crisis is war, violence and persecution raging in Africa, many, many countries in Africa, in the Middle East, and not to mention a few other places. And the problem is how our governments are dealing with it, because they're breaking the law. That's the problem.
So every week we report on that tragedy unfolding on the Mediterranean, where you see hundreds of lives lost. How has that affected both of you?
But we can see that, and it's horrifying, isn't it? And, well, we'll tell you how it's affected both of us. What we can't see is what our Australian friends are telling us about, is what's happening on Nauru and Manus, which is horrifying.
Yes.
Anyway,
we saw a wonderful film at the Sydney Film Festival called Chowka, Please Tell Us the Time, and it was all shot on a phone,
cell phone,
inside the detention centre, the detention camp on the island, by a detainee, and it basically chronicles and documents the horrors that were taking place there on a daily basis, the abuse, the torture, the violence against the detainees. I mean, these are innocent people. Their only guilt is that they just were seeking a better life and fleeing persecution or terrifying conditions from their country of origin, and they're treated worse than animals. I mean, it's the inhumanity is just staggering. So it's just an extraordinary achievement to see a film like that being made and getting out there, and so we're actually trying to be supportive of the film as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in our case, the making of the film arose from the grief that everybody felt, including both of us, seeing what was happening to the children and the mothers in the Mediterranean and the Adriatic, and in specifically, I think I've said this in our press kit, haven't I? This little boy of 2 found lying face down on the pebbles on this Turkish holiday beach. Now, he was drowned, and his baby sister is a little bit older, and his mother, trying to seek asylum in Greece, and the Greek island is just 2 miles away across the water, and there's commercial ferries going to and fro, and nobody would give them a ticket and then take the course of processing, etc., when they could claim asylum. They've escaped the Daesh, ISIS, call it what you will. We know what ISIS and Daesh are doing. And their town had been under siege twice and has been under siege since this happened. What's more?
Vanessa, in the film you speak of the obligation that all humans have at this time. In particular, you use that clip from Eleanor Roosevelt at the UN in 1948 with the establishment of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And you speak of the heritage of that. Do you feel as though that is now being neglected?
It is being violated. It is being contravened. The law is being broken by European governments, by the Australian government, and by the American government. But we've taken sort of responsibility because of Europe and our government as to what's happening with regard to Europe. They're breaking the law. Now, the Universal Declaration gave me hope as a child. I was 12 or something. That war would never happen again, because I knew what war was like. We'd lived through bombing, we'd survived bombing, and taking refuge in other parts of the country with relatives.
And subsequent to that, your work with Hungarian refugees in the 50s.
Then I worked with Hungarian refugees, and I couldn't do enough, but I did what all the volunteers are doing today, even more. The young people of today are so wonderful everywhere. Oh, so wonderful. That's the great thing. Yeah. And the refugees, what courage, what bravery. They should be so tenderly embraced and protected. And
we were in the Calais jungle filming and meeting also refugees of all ages. But some of the stories of the children, I mean, you just can't believe what these children have been through. You just think it's just not possible that they've had to travel these immense distances, face death, exploitation, potentially trafficking, getting to the camp, and then getting to a camp where they're not even safe anymore. And that's the thing, because there were cases of abductions, of attempted rapes, and
gangs come
in and trafficking. So I mean, just a constant nightmare for these children. You just don't know how they're going to cope growing up. I mean, we really, we hope and pray for them, and do everything we possibly can to help. But I think it's everybody's responsibility. It can't just be a few people who feel moral obligation to do something for them. It has to be the society at large, and it has to be the governments, as Vanessa said.
It has to be the law.
And it has to be the law. Yes.
Why are governments allowed to break the law? We're not, and rightly so, allowed to break the law. Why is no one taking the governments to the International Court of Justice?
Well, you also make the point in the film that there is a burden being put on developing countries when it comes to providing a refuge to those people fleeing conflict.
Well, they're being paid money, they're sort of being bribed to have refugee camps, which are little more than detention centres, with all respect to the NGOs who try and do their best to provide some form of basic bits of education, little bits of this and that, and some health. But, for instance, there's that wonderful Médecins Sans Frontières, as well as the big one, Save the Children, UNHCR, UNICEF. Médecins Sans Frontières, I went to Greece, as you can see in the film, and I was with them in a little van where they provide medical help in one of the what's called hotspots, and there was an Afghan woman teacher, 30 years old. She'd looked after 3,000 pupils, girls. She was 6 months pregnant. I knew she was going to be sent back because I knew from reading the newspapers what was intended for her and her young husband. It is grotesque. Send her back to Afghanistan. When everybody who's in the world where you still read online and know what's happening and go to TV shows, everybody knows that Afghanistan is rife with war and with tragedy.
Carlo, can you tell us how you came up with the idea of how you put this film together? Because you use both reality, of course, but also drama.
Well, the drama was very much Vanessa's idea from the beginning. She wanted to include Shakespeare in particular as a way of, I guess, expressing the timelessness of the issue. And it is timeless. It's been going on for centuries. There have been refugees of all kinds. And even Shakespeare was in tune with this in his day over 400 years ago. Hence the scene in The Tempest with Prospero and Miranda, who are actually very privileged. I mean, they're part of the upper echelons of that particular society, and they become refugees. So it shows you that this can happen to absolutely anyone, regardless of their social background or economic background.
Yes, indeed.
And it literally is a case of, but for the grace of God, there go I. And that's really what we hope people will be thinking about. That it isn't just, those poor people over there. It literally could be anywhere. If war broke out, it's reflected, exactly.
Because I note as well, thank you very much, I note as well that, in your lifetime, Vanessa, you were 2 when World War II broke out. And in your lifetime, how would you compare our current situation with other previous past experiences, issues, crises that we've been through?
Well, the direct comparison that I made in this film, and I want to stress, Carlo helped me because I'm completely new at editing. I don't understand a thing. But the direct comparison that has to be remembered is that Europe and the United States, in spite of that wonderful Eleanor Roosevelt, who did what she could, Europe and the United States refused visas to the Jews who were trying to escape from Hitler's Nazi Germany and Nazi Austria, and then Czechoslovakia and on. Refused visas. Finally, the outrage in the British public got very big, and that changed the situation. So the government agreed to allow some wonderful British people to organise what was called the Kindertransport, and some 10,000 children were brought over on some trains. Now, their parents weren't allowed in. They went to the gas ovens. That's what we did to the Jews. And I say we because I think we, citizens alive today, but my generation, bears the responsibility of saying, this happened before. It happened to other people in other countries known as Jews. Some of them weren't religious, some of them were political, some of them were communists, some of them were something else, whatever. And now we're doing it again. We're refusing visas again so that people are dying in the Mediterranean and in the Adriatic. And thank God for the dear people and the young people in Italy and in Greece and in Britain and in France and so on. And a lot of young people in America too. And I'm sure we're meeting some of them bit by bit in Australia, who are trying to give the protection that the law says must be given. I mean, it's law. It's not. There's an international court of justice.
And who did you make this film for?
You, me, him, everybody.
Well,
to keep us human, so we remember where we've come from, as in the midst of where we're going.
Vanessa Redgrave, thank you very much, and to you as well,
No,
Carlo Nero. Thank you both very much. Powerful film. We recommend everyone get a chance to have a look at it.
Bless you
Thank you.
both. Thanks for having us on.